Hello everyone, Simon Jacobson here. Another episode of Meaningful Live. Why is the world so obsessed with Jews? Let's just talk bluntly here. This program is dedicated by Harriet Sharaf in memory of Baba Pessi Greisman. Why indeed? It brings a smile to my face because I know as a Jew, and you can probably tell that I'm Jewish, I know acutely well that there are people who love me and there are people who hate me, as well as my family and community. And history is a witness. You don't have to look very far. You go to October 7th and look at the atrocities perpetrated precisely against Jews. It made no difference whether it was a secular Jew, an atheist, an agnostic, a religious, an orthodox, a ultra-orthodox, reform, conservative. I mean, no difference. The atrocities perpetrated. I mean, barbaric. I'm not saying the Jews are the only ones that have been victimized over history. But then you go back 80 years. Go back to the late 30s, 1930s, 40s. The Nazis, the Holocaust. 6 million of my people out of 18 million, a third. Before that, the pogroms. Before that, the inquisitions, the massacres, the bloodbaths throughout the Middle Ages. You name a country somewhere in Europe, and you'll probably find more Jewish blood in their rivers than water. Back to the Crusaders, to the Romans, to the Babylonians, the Spanish Empire in 1492 expelling all the Jews. So if it wasn't genocide, it was expulsion. If it wasn't expulsion, it was discrimination, overtaxation, singling out, the blood libels. And I'm not here just to paint a negative picture, just giving a realistic overview of history here. And before the Romans, it was the Greeks and the Syrians, and then the Babylonians, the Persians, and then finally the Egyptians, if you want to go back to the first original institutionalized, documented slavery and genocide in the Egyptian exile, the story of Exodus. Talking about thousands of years. And a fledgling nation. We're talking about the 14 to 15 million Jews max. I know it sounds like a lot more. I've seen different surveys and polls taking people in the street. How many Jews? Some people say hundreds of millions. Some say billions. So we definitely, disproportionate wouldn't even be the right word, would be a disproportionate word. How Jews have occupied headlines. An obsession, yes, obsession. For years, for millennia now. And we're still here. And then, of course, you hear the beautiful statements from Mark Twain, from Tolstoy, Leo Tolstoy, John Adams, who speak with a certain respect. This Jew that has been here from the beginning of time. So here you have a live specimen speaking to you. So what is this obsession with the Jews? The truth is this question should probably be asked to the nations of the world, not to the Jews. You're obsessed with us. You tell me what the reason is. But again, Jews, you like to analyze. They like to even analyze how they're hated and why they're hated or loved. One thing is clear. We've been around and we will be around. Some people think that's great and some may not like it. We all know what from the river to the sea means. We all know very clearly what the constitution of Hamas calls for. And it's not an exception. We've seen it so many times. So really the question is also what keeps us going? How are we still here after all those obituaries? I mean, again, 14, 15 million among 8 billion people. So books have been written and theories posited and ideas suggested and argued what lies at the root of anti-Semitism, what lies at the root in general of the being obsessed with Jews. And this goes both directions. People obsessed, unfortunately, in the bad way, and some obsessed in a good way. Is it just Jews are smarter? The Nobel Prizes? Is that what intrigues people? Is it the fact that we're a successful minority? That's what disturbs many? It's a minority that's not successful. People don't care that much. They just won't go away after everything that has been happened. I mean, Hitler's plan was that there'd be no Jews left on earth, and they'd have a museum called a Jewish museum. They'd be told there was once a race called the Jewish people, and they'd have artifacts and probably bars of soap from our very fat, from the fat of our bodies, and wigs from our hair. I don't want to get too grotesque here, but we're here. And Nazis, children and grandchildren, change their names. They don't tell you who their grandparents are. And the Jews that were living in Berlin today, in Frankfurt, in other cities, Munich, are proud Jews. And when you go to Hanukkah, to the Brandenburg Gate, where Hitler once stood with his Jugendrat, with his legions, spewing his venom, today you'll find a Hanukkah menorah there. So I'm proud to say that, despite the fact that we have been injured and we've been wounded and we've been hurt and we've been decimated. And now again, October 7th. So you would think the sympathy of the world, and I would say a big part of the world, was with the Jews. On Brandenburg Gate, in other places across the Eiffel Tower, you saw the solidarity with Israel. Probably is dissipated to some extent. But there's still parts of the world that accuse Israel of being, look what's going on in the international court. How could there be such a travesty of justice, of blaming the victim for perpetrating? So I understand Israel is a strong army, but they're defending themselves. I mean, no one argues that. So I understand they have all the catchwords, and I'm not going now into the discussion of colonialism and apartheid and all the trigger words developed in some Madison Avenue cynical advertising campaign trying to change the media, the campuses, Hollywood in the United States. But look what's going on campuses. What is this thing with the Jews? I mean, you want to talk about discrimination, you want to talk about minorities, you want to talk about genocide. Look what's going on in the Far East, look what's in Africa and so on. You don't even hear about what happened in Syria. So what is this lightning rod called the Jews? So there was the theory posited, not sure by whom, called the miner's canary. And again, this doesn't explain it, it just describes it. So in the good old days when they would mine, and mines could be very toxic, no one wanted to go into a mine because it was dangerous. So they would send in a cage, they'd send down in the deeper part of the mine a canary. Canaries have very sensitive lungs. So if there was anything toxic, they'd pull up the canary would be dead. So it was called the miner's canary. The canary was like the one that was like the guinea pig, the scapegoat, if you wish. So if there was toxic air, the first one it would affect would be the canary, and then people, of course, stayed away from there. So some call the Jews the miner's canary. For some reason, when there's toxins in the air, in different empires and so on, it's the Jews that will always be the first to be picked on. And then it will spill over. Hitler did not just target the Jews. It started with the Jews. But that still doesn't explain it. Is it the resentment of collective years of Christianity feeling threatened by the Jews who refused to accept Christianity? Being that Jesus was an Orthodox Jew and rejected by mainstream Judaism? But we know anti-Semitism precedes that. Same story with Islam. Muhammad first went to the Jews. They did not accept it. So he began to hate them. Martin Luther, the Reformation, when he introduced Protestantism, he went to the Jews first. They didn't accept him, and he became the most rabid anti-Semite. But I'm not just talking about anti-Semitism. I'm talking about, in general, the Jews. Is it the way Haman said it in the book of Esther? the Purim story, where he saw Haman, everybody was worshiping him. He was the second in command. But Mordechai refused to bow to him, and that incensed him. And he went and instigated Ahasuerus, the king of Persia, and says to him, you have one nation spread among all your countries. They're spread all over. And their religion, their faith is different than everyone else's. Is it that difference? If you read Mein Kampf, and I confess I did look at it, he echoes it, Hitler echoes it, by saying, I'm sitting in Vienna, I'm looking out a window, I see this Jew. What is this Jew? Is he one of us? And then begins whatever he was brainwashed with, the Jews becoming the parasites, living among us, but different than us, using us, drinking our blood. Is it that difference that the Jews always stood out and they refused to conform to the powers that be? I could see that being a major issue because nobody wants someone challenging them. And remember, until 250 years ago, the world was controlled by monarchs, by despots, by fascists, by totalitarians, by the church, by absolute authority that nobody could question. We were at their mercy. Everybody was. There was no such thing as freedom or freedom fighters, civil rights. There was no such thing as private property. The king can do whatever he wishes. It's only the United States of America around 250 years ago that changed that. So the idea that a Jew was living and never really accepted the authority of the king, I'm not talking about technically. As a matter of fact, in Jewish law, you're supposed to listen to authorities and follow the laws, even, by the way, even if the authority hates you. But that's another discussion. But the faith of the Jews was always to something invisible, to a God. And they said, we don't worship humans or man-made institutions and devices. We worship something much greater. That became, first with Christianity, then Islam, a standard. But before that, it was not a standard. It was one man, Abraham, one woman, Sarah, in the biblical times that refused to conform. So that, you can say, is a problem. And perhaps that's where the obsession began. They saw this one individual, and then later his children and family, that refused to just go along. We're not talking about in their following the laws or breaking laws. We're talking about in their behavior, how they dressed, what they ate, how they socialized. So you could see creating a resentment. Why are you different? Imagine you're going to school, all the classmates are all friendly with you, but one person decides, I'm not eating lunch with you because it's not kosher. Or other things. Today, I don't go to school because it's Yom Kippur. It's a holy day. In a world that didn't yet have such days. So it wasn't like common. Why are you standing out? Why do you feel like you're special? And the powers that be, of course, are threatened. Because here's someone that really ultimately answers to a higher authority. So that's why Abraham was a threat. On the positive side, it was essentially the conscience of the human race that the Jews began to represent. Because if you're in control, and you can kill anyone you like, and you can run their lives without any accountability, checks and balances, but there's someone in your empire, someone under your dominion, who does not accept that and says what you're doing is wrong, morally wrong. Of course you're going to learn to see them as an enemy because they're challenging your authority. Pharaoh sensed that. He saw the Jews. He owed them a lot because Joseph, as the story in the Bible says, helped turn Egypt into a superpower. He actually led it, was solely responsible for it becoming a superpower during the famine, and grain was the commodity of the times. But he saw a threat. He saw they're multiplying, they're different, they have their own customs. their own beliefs. And as he said, they'll overrun us. They'll control us. So all that comes to testify to something that you can see can be the root of being despising it or admiring and respecting it. Maybe we have something to learn from it. And indeed, the Christians did learn from it, turned it into a whole religion, as did the Muslims. So the Roman pagan Western world embraced Christianity with Constantine once he embraced it as the Roman emperor. The Arab pagan world embraced it through Muhammad. Essentially, those principles that there's a higher God, a higher authority, obviously with variations. And today you have over 4 billion people who will say Abraham is the first prophet, father of all nations in the world of the Bible, the words of the Bible. And even the Eastern world, Brahmin comes a variation of Abraham, father of morality, of kindness, of charity, all the values we cherish today. So when you think of it, both directions, that's something to be obsessed with because it represents everything we aspire to. You may remember the book called "The Gifts of the Jews" from Thomas Cahill. He said 30 concepts that the Jewish people introduced to the world. Basically, all the foundations of civilization: destiny, providence, optimism, hope. The list goes on. Charity. Another good book to look at is Michael Novak's On Two Wings, where one of his chapters begins, I think one of his early chapters, the basis of the American Republic on what? Torah metaphysics. In God we trust. In God we trust. All men are created equal. Okay? All people are created equal in the divine image. And we have inalienable rights endowed to us by the Creator. Straight out of the Bible. And then some of the quotes I mentioned before, whether it's from Tolstoy or Twain and so on. So when you look at it, I can see a reason for hating and loving at the same time. Some people love it and say, wow, this is what the Jewish people did. They never gave up. They were the keepers of the flame, or people of the book, and they kept that conscience alive until it ultimately affected all of us. There's another book called The Hebrew Republic, another very good book. Forgot the name of the author. Or you can hate them for it. Hate them for reminding us that there's a higher standard. And that hate then becomes something cultural. I've met anti-Semites that have no idea why they hate a Jew. They just say they do. They grew up with it. That's what they were told. Some never met a Jew. From a Muslim point of view, let's talk about Hamas for a moment. Why do they have in their constitution calling for the annihilation of all Jews from the river to the sea? What are they bothered by? Why are they so obsessed? Israel's a small little country, the size of the state of New Jersey, they say, right? You know how many how many millions of square miles the rest of the Arab countries have, the Muslim countries? But it's part of a religion. Because if the Jews have Israel, that means that God wants them to have Israel. That's what it says in the Bible. But if Muslims are the chosen people, they're chosen to take away from the Jews, because they're now the chosen people. That's why you have a mosque in every holy site, Christian or Jewish. Why? Because it demonstrates that not the Jews and not the Christians, but it's the Muslims. So there again, an obsession. At the end of the story, I have no doubt that we will be fine. The Christians, who are very aggressive and very violent for many years, have been tamed. A country like the United States is a gift. Gift to the Jews, a gift to all human race. We have our flaws, but the fundamental principles are sound. That is being eroded by plenty of forces and voices in this country. But it's still the documentation, the institution is based on that all human beings were created equal. So I have no doubt that Islam will be tamed as well. It take a little time, hopefully quicker than hopefully faster than slower. I'm not suggesting here at all that the Jews are perfect. I'm not suggesting I'm perfect. But the doctrine, the mandate, the story of Sinai, of a human race, of a human nation, part of the human race embracing not self-interest, not egocentric, but divine-centric, not self-interest, but purpose-driven life instead of a selfish-driven life. That is unprecedented. That lies at the heart of all human progress. It's not about me. So if you think of it from a, we'll call it Freudian Darwinian model, survival of the fittest, dog eats dog, the id, my pleasure comes first. That's my inherent natural state. And then there's an ego and superego and other forces that create red lights and green lights so we can coexist. In contrast to that, no, you have a soul, you have a divine soul, a transcendent soul that's stronger than your id and stronger than your pleasure. So there's a battle going on between two voices. That was what the Jews introduced into the world. So maybe a Jewish concept, but I don't see it as Jewish, I see it as universal, because these ideas, God is not Jewish. Every one of the 8 billion people on this planet was created by God equally, each in their own way, with the ability to transcend their self-interest for something higher, for higher purpose. And you've seen the world has changed. We are far more giving and far more charitable. There's work to be done. But it's already been pointed out by Steven Pinker and others that it's a trajectory of violence, of war, of selfishness. And direct proportion to that, humanitarian aid, charity, is literally a major trajectory, a major descent in violence and much more peaceful, harmonious interactions. They said work to be done. There's still wars. There's still violence. But I remember there was the earthquake in Haiti a number of years ago. What happened during earthquakes in the past? All the neighbors would pillage, rape, completely destroy the country that was victimized due to a natural disaster. Today, everyone's competing to send humanitarian aid to Haiti. There's a change in the climate. There's a change in the attitude. So there's a lot of hope. And the Jews have been at the forefront. And I'm going to emphasize again, not as exclusive. The whole point was always to be a light unto nations, to help people discover their soul, their calling. You don't have to be Jewish to embrace this. That's why Judaism does not demand, or on the contrary, it actually rejects and discourages conversion. Because you are who you are. God created you as you are in the divine image. The greatest statement that could ever be said is that you, every one of you, every human being on this earth is matters, is indispensable because you were put here for a purpose. Everyone, no one less. We each have to sing our unique song. When that happens, from a Jew's point of view, and I would say from a human point of view, we should all celebrate. Because then we have 8 billion musical notes, all part of one large cosmic symphony. And I'm not just trying to wax eloquent here and be poetic when we know that there's plenty of problems. But that's the objective. That's what we've always held on to. That's why the Jews are still here today, because they would never allow themselves to be defined by their enemies. As much pain that was inflicted on them, they did not become people who are victims. We're not going to be defined by you. That's the whole point of having a higher God. We're not defined by you. We're defined by our vision. We're defined by our beliefs. We're defined by something greater than human, something transcendent. And we will hold on to that hope and that dream no matter what happens to us. Whether you gas us or whether you destroy us or whether you burn us, like incinerate us, God forbid. That will never go away, and we'll pass it on and pass it on, and we will prevail because light is more powerful than darkness. And our passion for light and love is stronger than the most demonic passion for hatred. And there was plenty of demonic passion on October 7th and now, as it was during World War II, during the Holocaust, and so on. So this is my take on how I would explain the obsession. So it actually comes from a very powerful place. Whenever you're obsessed with anything, it always rooted somewhere. I don't know if obsession is a good word, but it means it's coming from somewhere. It means something is really getting to you for good or, unfortunately, sometimes for the bad. So we hope we can demystify it. The cryptic obsession, the cryptic being consumed with this, with these Jews. And I'm proud, I've never been more proud to be Jewish. Not as someone that stands out as different, on the contrary, declaring that you, whoever you are, Jew, non-Jew, believer, non-believer, atheist, agnostic, Buddhist, Christian, Muslim, Jew, whoever you may be, that you have a divine calling that's unique to you. To me, that is what I celebrate. That to me is the essence of Judaism. To help each of us find that voice. And when you know who you are, and you know what your purpose is, you don't have to compete with someone else or think they're taking away anything from you. Because we all are needed. We're all part of this indispensable mosaic. Each of us. That to me is victory. Not to destroy an enemy that wants to destroy me. That may be needed because unfortunately we live in a world where people are misguided and hating and hateful and have all their unhealthy toxins controlling their lives, or whatever it is that's driving them. That's what I am looking to achieve. And I hope you'll join me. I hope we join each other in this quest that began thousands of years ago. And we as Jews have been marching along with all that we've suffered. And we're here to tell the story. And not just to tell the story, to say, God is waiting for you. The world is waiting for you. Destiny is waiting for you. Each of us is not a bystander. We each are participants in writing the script of our own future destiny. The choreography. It's all part of what our choices. And how you behave today, and what you think, and what you say, and what you do will create a ripple effect in your life, the life of your children, families, and across the world. That's what the calling of our time is. That's the wake-up call. And those that are busy, either distracted, or they're so consumed with their own hatred, what can you do? You try your best, you bring the light, you tell the message, the positive way. Hopefully someone will hear it. Hopefully those that have to hear it will hear it. Those that can't hear, so like in anything, you keep trying. You never know when their ears will open, when their eyes will open. But we keep working on it. I firmly believe that the majority of the world may be ignorant, but ignorance is just the absence of knowledge. It's not evil per se. It's not hatred. It's the absence of love or the absence of knowing. So that's our job, is to inform, to inspire, to warm, illuminate everyone around us. And that is the purpose of my life, the purpose of Meaningful Life Center, the purpose of Judaism, the purpose of all human beings, because we all were sent here to this world by one God that equalizes us all, each in our own way, creating the harmony within diversity. And we do what we have to do, we will merit to see that world, a world of redemption, redemption from our own selfish interests, redemption from our own biases and prejudices, and from all those things that block us from seeing due to our subjectivity, whether it's due to bad education, whether it's due to stereotypes, whether it's due to being brainwashed or culturally programmed, and ultimately recognizing your unique voice. And when you see your unique voice, you'll see mine, and I'll see yours. Let's join together and create a true revolution. With technology, we have the ability to broadcast this, the broadest and most expansive ways. So let's do that. Simon Jacobson here. Always an honor sharing a few words. MeaningfulLife.com is our website where you can find the repository of all the materials, a wide spectrum of messages like this, both in video and audio and text form on social media platforms. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please share, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, your feedback, your comments. Thank you so much. Be blessed, and we will merit in our lifetime to see that world where the sun rises, and instead of hatred, love. Instead of swords, plowshares. Instead of weapons, instruments that connect us in the most powerful and beautiful way. Thank you.